in the series, we at Nagpur branch wish to host many such programs on international taxation. Friends, international taxation needs a lot of concentration in terms of understanding the law. It needs a lot of practice as well. And there are many fundamental things that we wish to understand. And we found none other than the better speaker on this, C.A. Sudha Bhushan from Mumbai. So, friends, we welcome her. And I now hand over the proceedings to Chairman of the Nagpur branch, the most dynamic and ever smiling C.A. Saket Bagadia. Over to you, Saket, sir.
Thank you so much, Jiten. It's always a privilege when you get to interact with one of the best faculties on a subject of relevance. C.A. Sudha Bhushan ji from Mumbai, the chief speaker for today. C.A. Pawan Jaju, the vice chairman and the Vikasa chairman from Amravati branch. C.A. Praveen Bhiran, the CP convener from Wardha CP chapter. C.A. Anjum Ghosh, the CP convener from Chandrapur branch. The entire Vikasa team and respected members, a very warm welcome to all of you. This has been a really effort on behalf of Nagpur branch when we thought of that international taxation. This is the new buzzword which is going on. Everybody of us really feel that this is a sort of a taboo wherein we really don't wish to go into it. There are two reasons for not going into it. One, that we feel that we don't have got too many of cases into our own city. And the other part is that we feel scared about the complications and the implications involved in that. So for the first part, I feel now it is becoming more and more relevant as the day progresses, which everybody of us is really looking into. And the second part is that as far as the complications and the implications are concerned, we thought it that let's call for a speaker who can explain you the intricacies in a very lucid manner so that you people really get into that. Friends, as part of an Nagpur branch initiative, I along with Jiten, we have and the entire managing committee, we have planned out that we are going to organize a series of this international taxation, wherein we are going to cover the different aspects of international taxation by various speakers in a phase-wise manner, so that each one of you get the required expertise and the relevant things to know before we really venture into this international taxation forum. We are really fortunate to have amongst us C.A. Sudha Bhushan ma'am. बहुत समय से जितेन उनको रिक्वेस्ट कर रहे थे कि मैम आपका थोड़ा समय दीजिए आपका because what you speak really goes make the things makes the subject so easy to understand, to listen to it. So we are really fortunate to have amongst us C.A. Sudha Bhushan ji from Mumbai. I welcome ma'am on behalf of Nagpur branch, and I along with my entire managing committee comprising of vice chairman C.A. Jitin Seglani, secretary C.A. Sanjay Agarwal, treasurer C.A. Akshay Kulhane, immediate past chairman C.A. Kirit Kalyani, past chairman C.A. Suren Durapka, managing committee member C.A. Harish Rampani, and our voice at the region C.A. Abhijit Kelkarji. We really welcome you on this forum, and I now request Jiten to take up the further proceedings.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman sir, for your apt remarks on the occasion. Friends, we have with us a lady in the form of speaker today, and to formally introduce C.A. Sudha Bhushan ma'am, I'll now request the CP convener of Chandrapur chapter, C. Anjum Ghosh ji, to please come forward and do the honors. Over to you, Anjum bhai.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a matter of great privilege for me to introduce today's speaker, C.A. Sudha Ji Bhushan, who is not only a chartered accountant, but also a company secretary, an insolvency resolution professional, a registered valuer, and an independent woman director registered with MCA. C.A. Sudha is co-founder of Taxpert Professional, a multifaceted consulting company. She is advisor to Bank of Baroda and also impaneled with HDFC Bank as an advisor and trainer. She is presently independent director with various Indian listed companies as well as Indian unlisted companies. She is an expert and has more than 2 decades of experience in audit, FEMA, international transaction advisory, structuring and regulatory affairs, and India's investment policy. She has authored various books on FDI, Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, and international taxation. She is a co-chairman of Business Environment Committee at Indian Merchant Chamber. She is a member of Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She had been and is member of Committee of International Taxation of WRC of ICI. Also, she is member of Editorial Committee of WRC of ICI and Committee of Women Empowerment of ICI. She is advisor to lot of big multinational companies, including Fortune 50 companies like Hitachi and CRH PLC on their international transactions. She started her career with Deloitte, then moved to a German consulting firm, and then to an Indian investment banking arm of an Irish company. A scholar throughout her life, she has been awarded many awards and recognitions, including Women Empowerment through CA Profession by Northern India Regional Council of ISPI. She is a noted speaker and has addressed various national and international forums like Horasis Asia Meet. Her articles are regularly published in the journal of several institutes like IMC, ICI, etc. She is visiting faculty to various prestigious business schools like Kohinoor Business School and NMIMS. With these words, I welcome our today's speaker, CA Sudha G. Bhushan. Thank you, Jitin.
Thank you, Anjum ji. Thank you so much for.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Sudhaji, just a moment. I wish to hand you over. Yeah, I wish to hand you over, but I just wish to say this, that ignorance is the basic cause of fear. Friends, we ignored this particular area of international taxation, and that is why the fear is all there. And today we are here to remove that fear. And we have none other than Sudha Bhushan madam amongst us, and she'll be guiding us through. So over to you, Sudha ma'am, and we wish to listen to you for full 70-80 minutes now. It's over to you.
Yes, before she speaks, I would request one more thing, that because she's also an independent director and on the board for many companies. So time permitting, if at the fag end or something like that, she can just give a 2 or 3 minutes overview about just what are the things which a person, which a chartered accountant can earn out of becoming an independent director.
Can learn, you said? Yeah. Thank you so much, Anjum ji, for giving such a good introduction. And I'm always very pleased to come to Nagpur. It is thanks for inviting me again, and I mean, such a warm welcome. Thank you. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jitin ji, for organizing this program. And big congratulations to the new team, CA Saket Bagaria, the Jitin Sagnali ji, Sanjay Agarwal ji, and Pawan ji for undertaking this responsibility of various positions at Nagpur branch. You have been doing a very good work to promote the various causes of institute, and also in the Corona times, as I have been interacting with Jitin bhai, I mean, it's truly recommendable work that you have been doing. Kudos to you. And it is also heartwarming to see that the respected members and from the Amravati branch has also joined. And Sunil Salampuria ji, thank you for making it possible and for always being willing to take the opportunity to enhance the knowledge of members of your branch. And let me also congratulate CA Anjum Ghoz from Chandrapur and CA Praveen Dhiren ji from Varda for doing wonderful work at their respective chapter. Now, friends, for another, as highlighted by Jitin bhai and also as highlighted by Saket ji, something FEMA, international transactions, international tax is something that only the name is scary. It's nothing in the act that we can't understand and we can't practice. And also, I was sharing before the session started, I was sharing with Saket ji that I keep getting calls from all over India, especially from the tier 2 cities, that ma'am, you are from Bombay, you are sitting in Bombay, that's why you are able to do the work of FEMA, and that's why you are getting it. Absolutely a myth, especially in these time of digital and in more and more connected world. I got a call from this lady in Guwahati or people from Meerut that since we are into tier 2 cities, how will we get the clients and how will we get the clients? Now, if clear text can sit at one place in Delhi and serve the world. I mean, all over the place. Why can't we develop our own? Why can't we develop our practice and enter into a totally new segment of one area of work? It is more on us that we develop such type of a skill set. So friends, for another 60-70 minutes that we have, we are going to cover three aspects. One is opportunities. Very, very important to understand the opportunities. What are the various type of opportunities under the Act? And secondly, we'll understand, like Varun, I think from our participants only, so we had called out for the question. So Varun, Savag, yeah.
Varun Vijayvargi. Varun Vijayvargi.
So he had specifically asked that how to execute a transaction and how to. I'll tell you, like when we get to that get that part of the slides, we'll see that how to technically deal under FEMA. And the third type that we'll be dealing with the various type of accounts under FEMA. That is very confusing, and that is what we keep dealing into. So that's what we'll be trying to touch upon. And with that, I am sure that you will be able to, what if even if you're not equipped 100% to understand the subject, however, the fear will go away. So let me share my slide that for today. I'm sharing my screen, and Jitin, if you can just tell me it is that it is shared. Yes, give me. Is my screen shared? Okay, thank you, Anju.
We see that. Yeah.
So this with this that. So as I was mentioning, first what we are trying, what we will understand will be the professional opportunities under FEMA. As we understand that FEMA is a very, very small act. It's a small act of 49 sections, but it is bucket full of opportunities. And it is an act to manage foreign exchange broadly that goes to say that every cross-border transaction. So every cross-border transaction that happens is governed by FEMA. That is, so only 49 sections that one has to look into. However, you see the vastness of the controlling power of the act, that every cross-border transaction that happens through the under the preview of FEMA. Now, every incoming and outgoing of the money in and outstanding in and outside India attracts the provisions of FEMA. The task of managing and regulating this flow lies with the Reserve Bank of India, which in turn is delegated to the AD banks. Now, here comes the opportunity when I'm asked that I'm sitting in a first-tier town, and then there are professionals who are from the second-tier town. More and more powers of the RBI are delegated to the various AD banks. More and more powers of Reserve Bank of India are going to the regional office of Reserve Bank of India. So if there is some compounding application, some application with regard to the permission from the Reserve Bank of India is required, I can say that almost 99%, almost 19, not exactly 99, I'll say around 90% of the powers have been delegated to the AD bank. Now, AD bank are the bank which are actually dealing with the transaction, which is sitting with which you are dealing with the banks that you are dealing with on behalf of your client. So that's where, and also the compliance, more and more compliance under FEMA is shifting to the online. It is that online forms are required to be filed, online permissions are required to be taken. It is online on everything has gone online, like it has gone online in case of MCA, like we have gone online in case of Income Tax Act. Similarly, all the forms have gone, mostly all the forms have gone online with the Reserve Bank of India as well. So under FEMA also, all forms have gone online. Now, every capital inflow and outflow needs the advice, structuring, certificate to be done by professionals. FEMA is an act filled with the professional opportunities. Now, however, only those who know the act will know the opportunity where it is. There are at least 30 certifications that are required to be done. There is an advisory that can be done. There is a transaction structuring that can be done. There is a due diligence that can be done. And there is a compounding under FEMA that can be done. So these 5 things that I think that we have the professional opportunity there. We'll discuss it in detail. Just every opportunity we are going to discuss in detail. Now, if you with regard to the certification, now certification, there are at least 30 type of certificates that are required to be given by a chartered accountant under FEMA. So there are not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are at least 30 type of certifications that are required to be taken from a chartered accountant under FEMA. Now, if the money is coming in India, there is a valuation certificate that needs to be taken from a chartered accountant. If the money is being invested out of India, there is a certificate that needs to be taken from a chartered accountant, that whether there is an annual certification that needs to be taken from a chartered accountant. If the money has been taken as an ECB, then also there is a certification that is required to be taken from a chartered accountant. So what I'll be doing, I'll be sharing with Saket Bhai, I'll be sharing wherever there is a certification requirement under FEMA, we'll share the list of those requirements that in the case of LO, BO, PO, in the case of ECB, that is required, that annual certification is required. So at many places, and as I said, not less than 30 places that this certification are required to be taken from a chartered accountant. So just to give you the the size of the opportunity. So from April 2000 till April 2020, the amount of FDI that India has received is around 27 lakh crore. From April 2000 till April 2020, the amount of FDI that India has received is 27 lakh crore. And my dear friends, this money could not have come into India without a certification by your good self, without a certification by a chartered accountant, till the time the certificate, the chartered accountant does not certify that the value at which the money has come into India is more than the fair value of the company, of the shares of the company, the money cannot come in. So that's the size that we are talking in, that this amount, when it has come through a certificate from a chartered accountant. So we have to understand that that's the scope of the opportunity. Similarly, when the amount of investment that has gone out of India, the amount of investment that has gone out of India in 1 month only. I'm not talking about in the month of April. So I have a little bit dated figure. So it's around 9,000 crore of Indian rupees. 1 month of ECB, 1 month of loan that has been taken by various Indian entities comes around 150 crore. So that's the amount of opportunity. That's the amount of opportunity that we are talking in terms of certification only. So what we are talking here is only the opportunities, and in opportunity, I am only talking about certification. Means you don't even have to look for the opportunity. The government has itself given the opportunity. Now, with regard to the advisory, there are many places the advisory comes into play. It comes from the type of transactions, that whether a transaction can be undertaken or it cannot be undertaken, from the how, and that many places, like we have got this question, and will be, if time permits, we'll be dealing with it, like whether ESOP can be, whether a foreign company can issue the ESOP to the employees of the Indian company. And if at all the ESOP has been issued to the employees of Indian company, how the employee of an Indian company can remit the funds outside India. So these are the type of advisory which arise into this act called FEMA. Transaction structuring, one of the other area of work that we can develop. Transaction structuring, like how transaction structuring, that how the transaction is best structured. What is the entry strategy that a foreign company can come into India? There are various ways, like whether the company should be fully incorporated in India, whether it should come as a JV, whether it should come at all or not, whether it should come as a LO, BO or PO. What can be the entry strategy? And then there are so many other transaction structuring that may be required to be structured for the foreign company, or as well as the Indian company is making investment outside India. Now, friends, I am not touching on the taxation aspect of our practice today. I am absolutely not going to touch on any of the ancillary acts like Companies Act or Income Tax Act. What we are talking here is purely the opportunities that are there under Foreign Exchange Management Act. Now, another opportunity is due diligence under FEMA. So that's my favorite, because I had conceptualized this concept in around 2013. Now, due diligence under FEMA will be every transaction. If you go, let me, if I can share my screen, just give me 1 minute, I'll do that. Now, every transaction of the balance sheet, yeah, so I have shared my screen again. If you see that every transaction of the balance sheet, my screen is shared. Pravinji, I changed my screen. Is it shared?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, visible.
Thanks. So what I'm bringing forth here, that if we think that FEMA applicability of FEMA is very restricted, I want to bring forth that we can conduct for our clients who have invested outside India, or for the client which are MNCs based in India, or the clients which are LO, BO, PO, or the clients which are exporting outside India, or the clients which are importing into India. We can conduct a full-fledged due diligence under FEMA for them, because if you see every transaction, every item in the balance sheet may have some or other provisions which needs to be complied in under FEMA. Now, if we see the share capital, it needs to be complied with the NDI rules 2019 and read with the FDI policy. If you see partly paid shares, one has to look into again the NDI rules. One has to ascertain whether these paid up capital, paid up shares were made fully paid up in 12 months or not. So similarly, for each of these transactions, for each of these items in the balance sheet, there is one or other provisions under FEMA that needs to be complied with. So my purpose right now here is to bring forth the various type of opportunities that is hidden in this small act of 49 section. Now, the only thing with this act is that this is very scattered act. the FEMA Act is very scattered act, and we'll see how it is scattered and how to get hold of the act actually. How to get hold, usko pakdenge aise means, how to execute a transaction under FEMA and how to understand it. We are going to see it. Right now, what we are looking at is the opportunities that are there. And right now, what we are looking at is the various items of the balance sheet. And what we are seeing here, that for every item of the balance sheet, there is one or other regulation or rule under FEMA that one has to look into whether it is complied in or not. If there is a debt from a foreign institution or foreign equity holder, one has to look into whether the FEMA borrowing or lending regulations has been complied with or not. And if it is not complied with, then one has to comply with it. And if it is during the due diligence process, you come to know that it has not been complied with, in that case, it gives you another opportunity that's called compounding under FEMA. Compounding under FEMA, another opportunity for the professionals for helping their clients to compound their offense. Now, what exactly is compounding? Now, compounding is a willful admission of the contravention, and compounding under FEMA is allowed. It's a voluntary process in which an individual or a corporate seeks compounding of the admitted contravention. It provides comfort to any person who does the contravention of provisions under FEMA 99. Now, there is a change from where under FERA, these compounding options were not available. So FERA is an act which was before FEMA, and we'll talk about it. Now, compounding under FEMA, there are two regulations, there are two rules that one has to understand. One is Foreign Exchange Compounding Proceedings Rules 2000 and read with the master directions under FEMA. Now, believe me, compounding under FEMA is the one of the most easiest compounding of any contravention that can be done. It's a simple A4 paper. In the simple A4 paper, we have to specify the facts and the contravention that has been done. And the more it is only the facts that needs to be stated properly. And if you ask me, I have not come across any authority more fair than the officials of Reserve Bank of India. We've been dealing with compounding just now, and the way they have been coordinating with us over the mail, over the calls, and the hearing was done over the call, and the way they have directed themselves to the AD bank to let the company file its return. So most cooperative, most ethical, and most non-corrupt are the people, officials of Reserve Bank of India. Now, compounding is an easy exercise, and of 100% of the compounding cases that we come across under FEMA, at least around 85 to 90% are with regard to the normal reporting delays. That ECB was required to be filed, it is not filed. The form FCGPR is delayed. So it is an option available. Earlier, there was no option of late submission fees, late filing fees. Now, RBI also gives the option of filing late filing fees. So either the company can go for compounding or for the LSF. However, LSF is not available in all the cases. It is only available for the reporting delays. And for all other cases, along with the reporting delays, compounding can be done. And compounding, the usual charges depends on the nature of the compounding, the nature of the contravention. However, it's depends on your company also, that what type of a contravention is. So these are the various professional opportunities that are available under FEMA, and one just have to understand it and look into the basics. It's a small act, but it's bit made complicated by various regulations, rules, notifications, and circular. It is required that the act is understood in the manner that that you understand the basics. Once the basics of the act is understood, it is the simplest act. There is nothing in the act that you actually need to worry about, because there is less of an interpretation. It is more of a fact. It is clear yes or no in most of the cases. It is clear more of a procedure driven exercise in most of the cases. So this is the various opportunities: certification, advisory, transaction structuring, due diligence, and compounding. What I'm going to do is to share with you the various certifications that are required, and also I'm going to share with you the due diligence, the various items of due diligence that one can look into. So as I said, FEMA is a small act, but it is little scattered. And one thing that differentiates the Foreign Exchange Management Act from the other act is that there are two main bodies. There are two main bodies which is actually regulating the act. One is the central government and other is the Reserve Bank of India. One is central government and other is the Reserve Bank of India. The bifurcation of powers between these two authorities is fairly very clear, and not that one central government is encroaching into the powers of Reserve Bank of India or vice versa. It is clear. However, it has been made more clear by the induction of NDI rules that happened in 2019. Yeah, so this is how the whole of the framework of the act is. That we have the act, we have notifications that is given by the Reserve Bank of India, we have rules that is given by the central government, we have circulars that is given by the RBI to AD Bank. Now you tell me, how does the government function? How does the government function? Now government function through its various ministries and then in turn through various departments. In a similar manner, a Reserve Bank of India functions through the banks. Now, how do it function? It gives the directions under Section 10 of FEMA. Reserve Bank of India gives the directions to the AD Bank with regard to the functioning of the Foreign Exchange Management Act. With regard to the functioning of Foreign Exchange Management Act, and all these directions are binding on the AD Bank. Now, as I said in the beginning, more and more powers of the Reserve Bank of India are delegated to the AD banks. Means if there is a client of yours looking for some solution, you don't have to rush to the Reserve Bank. Mostly it is the power, for example, with the power of regularization of your import payables, power of regularization of delays in export payment, power of regularization of your trade payables, the FCGPR filing, your ODI filing, mostly is with the AD Bank. Most of the powers, unless it is reaching far beyond then the expected timelines, it is given to the AD Bank. So basically you have to seek for the solution with the AD Bank only. So presently we are dealing with the case wherein we are converting, in fact that is done already. So we have converted the import payables into share capital. Now the import payables were due for more than a year. Import payables were due for more than a year, and it was just like for some payments were due for 6 months, some payments were due for more than a year. Now for that, see, for certain things the power is with the AD Bank. However, with certain things the power is not with the AD Bank. But if we are able to communicate and put forth a case nicely to the AD Bank in turn will be able to explain our case to the Reserve Bank of India. So more importantly, very important that the communication with the AD Bank is in the proper manner and in the comprehensive manner. if you were to ask me that, madam, what is the key to read FEMA? How do I execute the transaction? We'll see that execution of transaction. However, master direction is something which has, with regard to one type of a transaction, it has everything in it. So earlier we used to have master circulars, and master circular used to be consolidation of all the API DIR circulars, and it used to be updated in July. Now, instead of master circular, we have master directions. Now, master directions are updated on a regular basis. One thing I want to bring forth here, that since we are so tuned to study income tax, we see everything from the eyes of income tax. However, friends, please understand that FEMA as such, FEMA is not income tax. It's a transaction-based act. It's a transaction-based act. So for every transaction, one has to look into the applicability of FEMA. So the regulations also, rules also, master directions also under FEMA are transaction-based. Now, look at the transaction. What can be the various types of transaction if you see? And when you are looking into the transaction, have the balance sheet in your mind. Now, there can be transaction when a foreign money is coming as an investment into the company. When a foreign money is coming into an investment into a company. Now, there is a master direction with regard to that. So one thing that you have to look into is look for the master direction. That is the master direction available on the subject matter of your transaction. If the master direction is available, believe me that almost 100% of the transactions can be executed by reading the master direction alone, until unless it is something which is very complicated and you have to go back into the previous regulation that was there. You have to look into the basic regulation that is there. Most of the transaction can be executed by simply reading the master direction, which is available on the RBI website. FDI policy, then there is an FDI policy that is issued by the DPIIT, and that is to be read for the cases in case of the foreign investment in India. So this is what the basic structure and basic framework of FEMA is, and this is what we discussed, the various type of professional opportunities. If you have any questions till here, kindly be free to ask. Otherwise, we'll shift to the second limb of our presentation today, wherein I know you all will be understanding how to read FEMA. I can understand that you have got all excited about that, what and how to do the practice and how to understand this act and how to understand it in an easy fashion. So if you have any question, I'll stay here for half a minute or less. If you have any questions, kindly be free to ask, or otherwise we'll push ahead.
Ma'am, one query.
Yes.
There is one question in the chat box. What is the difference between master circular and master directions?
Yeah. So the difference between master circular and master direction, actually, master circular is nothing now. It's something which used to be there. It has been now done away with. So master circular have been done away with. So master circular used to be the consolidation of APDIR circulars. So basically, what are APDIR circulars? APDIR are the circulars which are issued by Reserve Bank of India to AD banks. Now, how will Reserve Bank of India give directions to the AD bank with respect to FEMA? How does it do it? It does it by way of issuing circulars. Now, master circulars are done away with effect long back, in fact. In place of that, we have master directions, which consolidates. Master direction consolidates all the directions that are given by the Reserve Bank of India to the AD Bank with respect to a particular transaction. For example, a transaction of taking the external commercial borrowing. अगर आपको पैसा लाना है, इंडिया में आपको लोन लेकर आना है, और इंडिया में आपको कैपिटल लेकर आना है, how will you bring the loan into India? So RBI directions issued to AD Bank, and then consolidation of those directions is called master direction. The good thing about master direction is that they are updated on a regular basis. That as soon as the APDIR circular is issued, they are updated. Whether FCRA is also governed
Madam,
by, so
one
Naresh,
more query.
Yeah, Naresh ji has asked. Naresh ji, hello, how are you? Actually, I had the privilege of meeting Naresh ji at earlier session also. I hope you remember me. So Naresh ji has asked whether FCRA is also governed by FEMA. You know, this is such a good question. Now, FCRA is not FEMA. FEMA is not FCRA. See, FEMA is this much, FCRA is this much. Can you see my hands? FEMA is this much, FCRA is this much. FEMA is an act to manage the foreign exchange. Now, FCRA is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which is made to manage and regulate the contribution that comes to India by way of donation. So if it is coming in NGO, then FCRA is applicable. Otherwise, FCRA is not applicable. It is FEMA, and even if it is a donation, then you need to take then you have to file the form under FCRA, and FCRA, my dear friends, is managed by MHA directly. It is managed by Ministry of Home Affairs. So I'll process. I think I'll process. Let us now jump into the subject, and I jump into the subject now. So this is also one of my favorite slide, wherein we try to understand and we try to make it easy for everyone to understand that how to get hold of the international transaction. See, there are these 4 abilities that an international transaction have to have. There are these 4 abilities that an international transaction have to have. One is allowability, other is vulnerability, accountability, and explainability. What are these 4 abilities? Let us start with explainability. Every international transaction needs to be explained very well through various type of documentation, with the concepts that we have, like POEM, that is a place of effective management, which talks about substance over form. It is very important that we have a proper documentation done for every international transaction. Now, so for there are various type of documentation which we can discuss in some session again. Explainability is one of the aspects. Now, accountability, that every international transaction needs to be reported at one place or other. If it is with the associated party, it needs to be reported under the form FCEB. If it needs to be reported under, so I would request people to let's ask the smaller questions, and so that I can read them also. Otherwise, if there are fact-based questions, what we will do, Kavita, we'll keep them for the end of the session. Now, I was talking about accountability. Now, accountability, that every transaction needs to be reported at one place or other. If it is with associated party, it needs to be reported in form 3CEB or at any other places. Now, vulnerability, if you see in an international transaction, our transaction is vulnerable in a foreign jurisdiction. Now, if any company has invested in India, definitely it is vulnerable. The profits of the company and the operations of the company are vulnerable to Indian laws. It is vulnerable to foreign exchange risk. It is vulnerable to political situation in India. So it is differently vulnerable. For if a company in India has invested in an outside jurisdiction, there are laws of that country. There are political situations in that country which are very different from the India. So the company is differently vulnerable. So these are the three type of ability that one has to look into while executing the transaction outside India. Vulnerability, basically taxation, that and also one type of a vulnerability is taxation, that the transaction is vulnerable to both the jurisdictions. And before undertaking the transaction, one has to understand the various exposures that are there. However, this is not the matter of subject matter today and not the matter of discussion, so we'll not be discussing it here. But the fourth thing that one has to look into, the fourth thing is the allowability of a transaction. Before undertaking any international transaction, one has to first look into that whether the transaction is allowed or not allowed, whether a transaction is allowed or not allowed, right? Before undertaking the transaction, you will look into whether the transaction is allowed or not allowed, international transaction. Now, this allowability comes from Foreign Exchange Management Act. This allowability comes from the Foreign Exchange Management Act. How it is that for determination of that, every transaction. So as I said, FEMA is a transaction-based act. For that, you have to divide every transaction. Every transaction is what? Buying a house outside India, purchasing shares outside India, remitting money to your brother outside India, or receiving ESOPs, Indian company receiving, Indian employees receiving ESOP, or any issuance of capital, issuance of shares, everything is a transaction. Before undertaking a transaction, a very easy to understand rule. Before undertaking any transaction, सिर्फ एक ही काम करना है आपको. What you have to look into that, whether you have to define the transaction. You have to understand what are the capital account transaction and what is a current account transaction. What is the characterization? What is the character of the transaction, and whether the transaction is allowed to be undertaken or it is not allowed to be undertaken. That is, immediately, if a client comes to you, your client comes to you that Anjum ji ke paas aate hain. Anjum ji's brother is in US. Anjum ji's brother is in US, and in US he has this very good flat. He has a very good flat. Now Anjum wants to acquire that flat. This is a transaction that we are talking about here. Now, the first thing that one has to look into that whether this is a current account transaction or is it a capital account transaction. The thumb rule of FEMA is that every current account transaction, first of all, what we have to do is to characterize the transaction into these two types of transaction, that is current and capital. There are two buckets, current and capital. Once you have ascertained whether the transaction is a current account, you can see that you can immediately give the solution that, okay, you can remit the funds. The transaction is allowed. The transaction is allowed. And if after categorizing the transaction, you come to the conclusion that the transaction is a capital account transaction, then you can give the conclusion that it's a transaction which is not allowed to be, undertaken, So the thumb rule is that all current account transactions are allowed to be undertaken unless it is prohibited, and all capital account transactions are prohibited unless it is permitted. If we are able to understand the distinction between current account transaction and capital account transaction, a FEMA is a very, very simplistic act, and any international transaction you will be sorted at least from the front of the Foreign Exchange Management Act. So let us jump into the understanding of current account transaction. The current account, I hope everyone is with me that what we are looking that for checking on international transaction, we have to check on the 4 things. But before we check into anything else, we have to look into whether the transaction is allowed to be undertaken or it is not allowed to be undertaken. As a thumb rule, under FEMA, all current account transactions are allowed to be undertaken and all capital account transactions are not allowed to be undertaken. Now, what it percolates down to? Obviously, for that, we need to understand what is the meaning of current account transaction and capital account transaction. We have to look into that what type of a transaction is the transaction that we are executing, and then we have to look into whether it is allowed or not allowed. Not very difficult, very easy to understand, very, very easy to understand. Just one thing, however, the current and capital is not what we look into the normal parlance. The moment capital account comes into our mind, what we think that it is something which is capital in nature, which is generating the revenue for the entity. However, my friends, what is the problem in our understanding is that under FEMA, FEMA is not concerned about income tax. FEMA is not your accounts. It is an economic concept. So current and capital account are economic concept under FEMA. So you have to understand it from the perspective of the regulator, that what exactly the regulator is trying to achieve by defining the current and capital account transaction. Now, without wasting much of the time, let us understand the current and capital account transaction. Now, current account transaction is defined to mean a transaction which is other than capital account transaction. Capital account which is other than capital account transaction and includes the following. So it is defined, means a transaction which is other than capital account transaction. It is something which is other than capital account transaction. However, without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing transaction, it includes these 4 types of payment. Means in these 4 types of payments, 1, 2, 3, 4. If these payments are there, even if it is falling into the definition of capital account, it will be taken to be current account only. It will be taken to be current account only. What are these transactions? Let us quickly run through. Payment due in connection with foreign trade, other current business services, short-term banking and credit facility in the ordinary course of business. Payment due as interest on loan and net income from investments. Remittances for living expenses of parents, spouse and children residing abroad. Expenses in connection with foreign travel, education, medical care of parents, spouse, children. So these are the various. Let us first, now this is the definition of current account transaction. Let us now understand, before we get into the, I want to take you to the capital account transaction. So what we have already seen is that current account is something which is not a capital account. And without going into the regulations much, it will be good for us to understand the understanding, means to get the basic understanding of what is current and capital account. Now, capital account transaction is something, if you can see this small figure that is there, is something which is changing, which is altering the asset and liabilities outside India of a person who is resident in India, and vice versa, So asset and liabilities outside India of a person who is resident in India, or the asset and liabilities in India of a person resident outside India, We are going to understand this with an example. Now, the example, let us see. An Indian resident imports machinery from a vendor. An Indian resident imports machinery from a vendor for installing in his factory. So what type of a transaction is it? An Indian resident imports machinery from a vendor in UK for installing in his factory. What type of a transaction do you think it is? Current account. Okay, Praveen. Yep. Any other views that we may have? That an Indian company, an Indian resident imports machinery from a vendor in UK for installing in his factory. What type of a transaction is it? So I'm getting the answers from Praveen, Sumit, and can I get more answers so that we can quickly move? What kind of a transaction is it? Okay, so everyone, okay. So it depends. What kind of a transaction is it? It will depend on how the payment of the machinery has been done. Just because it is a capital based machinery and it is enhancing the earning capacity of the company, it does not make it capital account transaction. So this transaction, wherein if the money has been paid by the Indian vendor to the UK vendor for installing the machinery in his factory, if the money has been paid upfront, in that case, there is no alteration in the asset or liability of the Indian resident or of the vendor in UK. Therefore, this transaction is a current account transaction. Let us see another example so that everyone is on the same page. What happens if the machinery is imported on a credit period of 3 months? What happens if the machinery is imported for the credit period of 3 months? So if as we had seen, as we had seen that if the machinery is imported for a period of 3 months, you will say that the Indian resident who is importing the machinery is creating the liability, and the UK vendor is creating the asset in India. However, if you see, if when we had seen the current account transaction, we had seen that it specifically mentions the short-term payment in the normal course of business. So if it is in the normal course of business, in that case, if it is in the normal course of business, in that case, it will still be a current account transaction. It will still be a current account transaction. Again, let us see it with an example that Indian resident transfers $1,000 to his NRI brother in New York as gift. The funds are sent from resident Indian bank to an NRI brother's bank account in New York. Now, what kind of a transaction is it? What kind of a transaction is it that you are gifting? That you are gifting the that you are gifting the money to your brother in outside India. Now there can be, if you see the transaction, there is a gift that is going outside India. Neither the brother nor you are creating any asset or liability outside India. So for a brother who is in outside India, what has happened that their transaction is complete in itself. For a brother who is outside India, he has received the gift outside India only. He has not created any asset in India. He has not created any asset in India because of this transaction. Because you are gifting your brother X amount of money outside India, your mother is outside or your brother is outside, you are gifting them X amount of money outside India under LRS for that matter. In that case, the transaction is complete in itself. The transaction is complete in itself and there is no liability or asset that is being created for you in India. Therefore, this transaction wherein you are gifting anything to your brother, in that case, the transaction will be still a current account transaction. Now, if it happens that there is a farmhouse, there is a residential plot, that you have in India, and that plot you want to give to your brother. Whether what type of a transaction will it be? Now, instead of this, instead of gifting him anything outside India, if there is something that you want to give to your brother in India, what kind of a transaction will it be? You have a residential house. Now, that house you want to give to your brother. You have a residential house in India. And that residential house you want to give to your brother. What kind of a transaction will it be? You have a residential house in India and you want to give that particular house to your brother who is a non-resident. Now, what type of a transaction will it be? It will be a capital account transaction because of this transaction, your brother is creating an asset in India. That's why this transaction will be a capital account transaction. So I hope I have been able to explain the differentiation between current and capital account transaction. And because that's something which is very, very essential for us to understand, to look into that whether the transaction is allowed or it is not allowed. One thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention here, that there are certain type of transaction that are specifically mentioned in the definition of current account transaction. And although they may be capital account transaction, however, they will be construed as current account transaction because they are specifically mentioned in the definition of current account. Now, I want to draw your attention to this type of transactions, especially the bullet point 2. It is payment dues as interest on loan and net income from investment. So interest on loans, net income from investments. So whenever we are talking about the restriction on the payment of money, there cannot be any restriction. There cannot be any restriction that can be levied by RBI on the remittance of current account transaction, of current account transaction. Now, no matter what type of a transaction it is, the interest on loan and net income from earning, which are the normal proceeds of the investment in India, it cannot be classified as a capital account transaction, and it cannot be, since it cannot be classified as a capital account transaction, there cannot be any restriction on these interest on loan and net income from investment. So even if we give it any color, these type of transaction will be the current account transaction, and there cannot be any restriction imposed on the remittance of the current account transaction in terms of the interest on loan or net income from investments. What we had seen was that one thing that we had seen, that all current account transactions are allowed and all non-current transactions are not allowed. However, the central government can impose the central government by notification can impose the restrictions on the current account transactions. And for this, the central government has come up with the Foreign Exchange Management Current Account Rules 2000. And these rules are divided into 7 sub-rules, which talks about, there are 3 rules in that which specifies the transactions which are totally prohibited, requiring prior approval, and the transaction which require prior approval of government, or the transaction which require the prior approval of Reserve Bank of India. So as such, first thing is that all current account transactions are allowed. However, there is rule 3, 4 and 5 under current account transactions rules, which specifies few transactions which are not allowed. Although they are current account, yet they are not allowed. So these transactions, what did we read? That current account transactions are allowed unless prohibited. Now these prohibited items are given under rule 3, 4 and 5 of the current account transaction rules. So does it sort you? Does it sort you that whenever you're looking at a transaction, whenever you are looking at a transaction, you have to classify it whether it is current and capital. And once you have classified it as a current account transaction, what one has to go and look into is that whether it is falling under rule 3, 4 or 5 of the current account transaction rules. If it is falling under the current rule 3, 4 and 5, we will immediately understand the restrictions on those items and we will comply with that. For example, rule 3 talks about the transactions which are completely prohibited and which cannot be undertaken at all, even if it is a current account transaction. And out of these 8 items, around 6 items are already redundant. It does not make it's all like there used to be the non-resident special rupee scheme account, the entry number 8, which is no more the scheme now. It is all gone. So there used to be a dividend balancing requirement which used to be there, which is not there right now. So it is gone. So there used to be, so these are the transactions which are prohibited, although they are current account. Now, Rule 4, Schedule 2 talks about the transactions which are, although current account, yet you need the permission from the government of India. So what are kind of transactions are these? These are like the transactions like payment into the transponders in terms of the hiring charges by the TV channels, internet service provider, or the remittance of freight of the vessel chartered by a PSU. So these, if you go into deeper into all these type of transactions, you will see that there is a there is a motive behind restrictions of these transactions, and definitely the motive is to secure the Indian industry as well. So these type of transactions, and these are the specified transactions. So when we are talking about Rule 2, Rule 4, Schedule 2, these are the specified transaction, and if the transaction is falling into this type of transaction, one has to look into one has to take the permission from the central government. Now comes the Rule 5, which talks about the transactions for which the permission from Reserve Bank of India is required. So current and capital, if it is capital, one has to look into whether it is falling in Rule 3, 4, 5. And Rule 3 talks about that you cannot take the transaction, means under that cross-border transaction, that international transaction cannot be undertaken. Second is Rule 4, it talks about that if it is a transaction which is specified in Schedule 2, in that case, you need the permission from the Ministry of the central government. Now we're talking about Rule 5, that if it is a transaction which is falling under Rule 5, in that case, Reserve Bank approval from the Reserve Bank of India is required. So these are the various types of transactions which are specified. For example, donation exceeding 1% or the commission exceeding X amount, the remittances for the consulting fees exceeding the USD 10 lakh USD in case of the projects other than infrastructure, or in the projects of infrastructure it is 1 crore USD. So one has to just look into, see, now if there is a payment of a consulting fees, let us see if there is a payment of consulting fees to the outside consultant. Now, what type of a transaction is it? Can I have some views on it quickly? That there is a payment of a consulting fees. There is a payment, your company, your client company wants to make a consulting fees outside India to a consultant that they have hired outside India. So what type of a transaction is it? I'm asking a very simple question. Your company, your client's company or your company where you are acting as a CFO or as a promoter, that company wants to make a payment to the consultant outside India. In that case, what kind of a transaction is it? Okay, Varun Vijayavargi, I got your surname Varun now. Sorry, I could not get it earlier. So Varun is saying current account. Payal is saying current account. Praveen is saying current account. So it's a current account transaction because once you have made the payment and you have received the service, the payment, the transaction is complete. There is no other, nothing. There is no creation of liability outside India or asset outside India. So the transaction is complete. Since the transaction is complete, it's a current account transaction because it is not creating any asset or liability outside India. Now, the moment you have understood that it is a current account transaction, you will say to the client that, okay, this is allowed. No, it doesn't matter. You give the instruction to your AD bank, this transaction can be executed. However, what you have to check is to check Rule 3, 4, and 5. Under Rule 5, any remittance towards consulting fees, which is beyond which is beyond 10 lakh USD in case of any other project except for infrastructure, and 1 crore USD in infrastructure project, that transaction needs to go through the approval of RBI. So in that particular case, RBI approval is required. So one has to check that whether the transaction is falling in 4 type of transactions as specified in Rule 5. Now coming, let me see if there is any other thing that needs to be discussed. Okay, if for the Rule 5, for the individuals, see there is a concept of fuller account convertibility. There is a concept of fuller account convertibility, means that how much the currency is convertible, that how much freely the transaction in an Indian rupees can happen. So Indian rupees is partially convertible, and as we go along, as we move towards from the unregulated entity to the regulated entity, we see that the convertibility increases. That means residents are allowed to remit only USD $250,000 every year outside India. Means there is absolutely no other limit than $250,000. Means you can remit as an individual, you can remit only $250,000, except for 2-3 conditions, only for 2-3 cases where they have given the relaxation, that is in case of medical treatment and all. Otherwise in this case, any transaction, any individual, resident individual cannot remit more than $250,000. So what I told you right now, that the convertibility of currency as far as Indian rupee is concerned, it increases as we increase on the level of regulated entity. Now, if the entity is a company, if you see that company is a regulated entity, so that is given more power and more funds to cash with, that they are given more freedom to remit the money outside India. There is limited to 400% of their net worth. Now that's a limit that, and also there are fewer restrictions. There are only few restrictions, like 4 restrictions that are there for non-individual entities. For individuals, it's only $250,000, even if it is a current account transaction. Even if it is for current account transaction, an individual can remit $250,000 only. And for the non-individuals, they can remit any amount of money only if it is a current account transaction. However, it is further subjected to the 4 type of transactions. So this is what was relevant to be understood. Now let us see if there is anything that we need to understand with regard to your. Please don't worry. I'm going to share this PPT with the branch, and it will be shared with you. We had seen capital account transaction. We had understood it, and we have also understood that all capital account transactions, we have also understood that all capital account transactions are prohibited. Matlab means what? Means if I want to buy land outside India, if I want to buy shares outside India, if a foreign company wants to invest into India, if a foreign company wants to give loan to an Indian entity, all this is prohibited because it is a capital account transaction. No. What we see is that all capital account transactions are prohibited. All capital account transactions are prohibited unless permitted. It is just the replica. It is just the opposite of current account transaction. So before executing capital account transaction, one has to look into the particular rule, the particular regulation which allows that transaction to be undertaken. And there is a rule, there is a regulation for every type of transaction that can be executed, for every type of a transaction that can be, every type of a capital account transaction that can be executed. If there is no rule or regulation regarding it, that means it cannot be undertaken. It is not allowed to be undertaken. So if it is stated that the Indian entity, mostly all type of capital account transactions are also, for example, it is mentioned that Indian entity, can an Indian entity give loan to an entity outside India? A transaction, can an Indian entity give loan to an entity outside India? The Indian entity cannot give loan outside India. So that transaction is specifically not allowed. So it is prohibited. How is it allowed? It is allowed that you have to be an equity holder. So Indian entity has to be an equity holder. In that case, it is allowed. So section 6 is the one which permits the capital account transaction to be undertaken. And there are, so what we just saw is that all capital account transactions are not allowed. However, it is allowed as per the rules or regulations that are framed to allow that particular transaction. Now, there are transactions that are specifically permitted for the person resident in India. There are transactions that are permitted for the persons resident outside India. And then there are simultaneous rules or regulations framed to calculate, to do those transactions. So there is a transaction wherein whether an Indian entity can open foreign currency account in India, whether the person resident outside India can open an account in India. So all these are capital account transaction. Once we know capital account, we have to look for the relevant regulation that allows that transaction. We have to look for that relevant regulation that allows that transaction. Yeah. So that's all about current and capital. So once you are sorted on the current and capital, it's much easier to understand and execute the act, because in that case you know where to go. Now, just now, Praveen Bhai asked that please throw some light on the various accounts that can be opened by NRI and PIO and OCI. So we know when a person who is a NRI will open an account in India, it will be a capital account transaction. Why? Because it will create an asset in India. So it will be a capital account transaction. Now, since it's a capital account transaction, what do we have to look for? We have to look for the particular rule or regulation that allows that particular transaction to be undertaken. If you don't find any rules or regulation, in that case, the transaction cannot be undertaken. So let us now understand so we are already, I think, running out of time. So maybe another 10 minutes, what I will do, we will talk about the various, another 5 to 10 minutes, we'll talk about the various type of accounts that can be opened by the NRIs. What we'll try to clear conceptually. We'll try to be clear conceptually, because otherwise FEMA is very easy. You just go into the particular regulation and you will find yes or no. And post that we'll take the questions. One of while discussing the FEMA, if you see, there are various entities under the Act. There are Indian parties, there are non-resident Indians, then there are OCI, PIO, then foreign institutional investor, your portfolio investor. There are various entities depending on the different regulation and different type of transaction. So one of the entity that I always find most confusing and with which we deal the most is resident, is individual. Now individual can take so many forms under FEMA. It can be resident, the individual can be non-resident, the individual can be PIO, the individual can be OCI. Now, what I found, and with my experience with various banks, I won't say with various professional colleagues, however, with my experience with various banks, what I found that there is a lot of ambiguity in the understanding, not in the act, but in the understanding with regard to the concept of NRI, PIO, and OCI. There are 2-3 things that I want to clear. One is that FEMA as such is not bothered about your citizenship. There is only one place in the whole regulations, rules, notification act that it talks about the citizenship is when it talks about the downstream investment. Apart from there, under FEMA, it is not bothered about your citizenship as such. It does not talk about the citizenship. It talks about the residential status based on the period of number of days. That's one thing. Another thing is that the difference, apart from all the other difference, the difference between NRI, PIO, and OCI, first of all, NRI we can put in one bucket, and PIO and OCI we can put in another bucket. Now, NRI is very simple to understand. NRI is someone who is a citizen of India, and who is just not residing in India. He is a citizen of India. And as such, PIO and OCI is concerned, they are not the citizen of India. They are not citizen of India. Maybe their grandfather, their forefather had been the citizen of India. So that's the difference between these two. That's the major difference between these two. NRI, PIO, and OCI. So NRIs are the people who are the citizens of India, and PIO and OCI are not the citizens of India. However, as far as FEMA is concerned, now again, what exactly NRI, PIO, OCI, what exactly is the difference? Now, it is a status. PIO is a status. OCI is a status. And also to bring in more rationalization, PIO cardholder and OCI cardholder have been merged into OCI cardholder. So you don't have to be confused there as well. Also, under FEMA, I think there is no need to get confused into these three terms, because most of the places, as far as I know, NRI, PIO, and OCI, whatever NRI is allowed to do, PIO and OCI can also do. NRI can make the investment, PIO can also make the investment. So one has to be reading it properly, whether the OCI or PIO is allowed. However, as far as I have not come across any situation wherein the PIO are put at the disadvantageous position than NRI. It is only the few places. It is only the few places like PIO and OCIs are not allowed to vote, and only at a few places, that is also outside FEMA, that there is a differentiation between NRI and PIO. Otherwise, first of all, PIO and OCI is merged into one class now. OCI cardholder, जो भी पहले PIO cardholder थे, that were deemed to be OCI cardholder, and they were allowed to be apply as an OCI cardholder. And NRI and PIO, they otherwise under FEMA, they go hand in hand. I hope that that brought some clarity into the concept. Now, let me devote another 5 minutes on this concept of various accounts that are there under which can be opened by all these NRIs. This is also one of the very confusing area that is there for all of us professionals. Let me try to make it simple for you. First of all, when we talk about the various type of accounts, when we talk about the various type of accounts, let me at the cost of repetition, let me again reiterate it that opening an account by a person resident outside India in India will create the asset for the person resident outside India in India. Therefore, it's a capital account transaction. Since it's a capital account transaction, one has to immediately look for it that whether this is allowed to be undertaken or not allowed to be undertaken. If it is allowed to be undertaken, one has to look for the relevant regulation under which it is allowed to be undertaken and how is it allowed to be undertaken. So for opening an account in India by the NRI, we have Foreign Exchange Management Deposit Regulation 2016. So there are various type of accounts that can be opened by the NRI. Major type of account is NRE and NRO account. There are 4 types actually: NRE, FCNRB, NRO, and SNRR account. However, if we are talking in a broad terms, NRE account and NRO account can be put in 2 different buckets, and you can club SNRR account with NRO account, and you can club NRE account with FCNRB account because the properties of both these accounts are same. Conceptually, NRE account will hold everything. So So NRE account will hold everything that is transmitted from outside India. So the major resources of major credits, the credits that happen in NRE account are the funds that are from outside India, and the credit that happen from the NRO accounts are the credits which happen from India. So there was a resident, he shifted to outside India. He will still be receiving certain amount of income, like his rental income, or maybe dividend income, or maybe pension, which he is still receiving in India. That can be credited to his NRO account. Now, NRE account is basically the funds that are transmitted from outside India. If there are funds which is earned outside India, in that case, those funds can be deposited into NRE account. Now, if you see the funds, the sources of fund of NRE account is from outside India. And obviously, we as a country, we promote the funding from outside India in every manner, so that we can improve on our foreign exchange reserves. Therefore, there is a tax advantage that is given to the funds that is maintained in the NRE account. That is, it is tax exempt. So interest in NRE account is tax exempt, and also if you see the funds, the source of the fund is from outside India. Therefore, the money is freely repatriable. There is absolutely no restriction on the repatriation of funds from the NRE account. However, if you shift your funds from NRE account to NRO account, then it is not repatriable. So you have to take and advise the clients, and they have to take the informed call. NRO account, the source of the funds is from India. The major concern in that fund that whether it is repatriable. So there is a restriction on the amount of funds that can be remitted from the NRO account. So since the source is in India, now if you see, the resident can remit only $250,000. Now, for an NRI which is receiving the money in India, which is deposited in NRO account, so there has to be some restriction on that account. It cannot be given the free hand. So we have the restriction on the operation of NRO account. However, the current income that is earned in NRO account, that is deposited in NRO account, that is freely repatriable. There is no restriction on the remittance from the NRO account on the current income, current income by way of rent and other incomes that is deposited in NRO account. So there is no restriction on the remittance of that money after payment of tax. And I'm just seeing if there is anything that calls for the discussion. Basically, repatriability we have checked, and taxability we have seen that NRE account and FCNRB account. So the difference between NRE account is that NRE account is maintained in rupees and FCNRB account is maintained in the foreign currency. Loan against a deposit in NRO account, wherever you want to take it, whosoever want to take it, is all permitted. Similar to the FCNRB account also, it is all permitted. Loan against NRO account is very restricted. Only the account holder can take it, or it can be given to the third party subject to the restrictions. Now the restrictions, if you see, restrictions are the usual restrictions. There are 3 types of restrictions which are always there on the use of funds in India. One is buying of the agricultural land. Second is dealing in the real estate property. So these type of restrictions, if you see, is there whatever time the money is coming in India, in whatever form the money is coming in India, the restriction with regard to on lending, doing the real estate business, or investment in the agriculture or plantation land, that is there, irrespective of the way in which the money is coming in India. So this is a quick example wherein, you know, whenever the residential status of a person is changing, whenever the resident is becoming non-resident, whatever usual account that the person has will change into NRO account. So whenever whatever usual, I mean, whatever current and saving account that he has in India, that will change into the NRO account by default. And when there is a change in the residential status of a person from the non-resident to resident, from the resident, non-resident, from the non-resident to resident, in that case, all his NRE account will be converted into RFC account. All his NRE account will be converted into RFC account, and all his NRO account will be converted into its usual saving account. So NRE account will be converted into RFC account. Just for the information, again, RFC account is something which can be maintained by the resident Indians, so that they can retain the foreign exchange earned outside India, and that account is also freely repatriable. The usual mistakes that is done by the entities. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so the usual mistake that is done by the entities is that after there is a change in the residential status, they still keep holding the privilege that is given to the NRE account. However, as per the deposit regulation, the privilege that is given to the NRE account is only given to the extent when they were the non-resident, and the moment the residential status of the person changes to being the resident, in that case the privilege of having the exempt income changes, and that interest becomes taxable. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. As such, the residential status is concerned, it's a matter of the operation of law, and the person has to prove its residential status. Another important thing, just this thing we'll discuss, and then we'll take up the queries. I know you'll have a lot of queries. But however, very important thing that I want to take up right now is that the residential status, if you see NR resident, non-resident, under FEMA, it's a transaction based. Now, if a person wants to give deposits in NRE or FCNR account in India, and so the Indian resident obviously cannot keep the deposits, and it is NRI only that can keep the deposit. So under FEMA, it is very important that the accurate residential status is determined so that we can determine whether the person is NRI or a resident, so that we can in turn determine whether the person can hold those deposits or not. So I think with this, I'll close the session here as far as I had to talk. And what we have tried to discuss is we started with various professional opportunities that are there. And we briefly also touched upon the various limbs of FEMA, that is notification, regulation, then you have rules, regulations, etc., master directions. And then we touched on the capital and current account transaction. After that, we have briefly touched on the NRI, PIU, and OCI. And then we have seen the various type of accounts, that is NRE and NRO account in the session today. So if you have any queries on that, I'll be very happy to take. We can take that. I'm very sorry for exceeding the limit.
No, ma'am, I think everyone was engrossed in the session, and they had enjoyed a lot, because I have seen participants who got disconnected and then they are still reconnecting and they are trying to listen to what you are saying. So that is the kind of interest that you have generated from the session. Ma'am, can you just put off the screen sharing so that I can see the chat box?
Yes.
I'm not able to see the chat box here. I just wish to admit this, that this was the first time wherein we had so much of chats received from for the participants. So it was very interactive session, of course, and I think participants are definitely enjoyed what you actually wanted to convey, and it is received. I'll just take the queries. There was one query which was received earlier. I'll just because there were so many chats that have come, so I think I'll miss certain queries is what I feel. The first question that came was we skipped this question, that for advisory one needs to be well versed with all the regulations or master directions. Whether master directions covers it all for the sake of advisory services.
See, advisory services now, it will depend on what type of a query it is. Sometimes it is something that we have to go back into the provisions. Sometimes it is pure yes and no. So advisory, mostly it is easy and it can be dealt with by the master direction itself. However, if it is something which is ambiguous, I don't think so that we can rely purely on the master direction. I mean, we'll have to go deeper into the regulation, and the intention of the law needs to be seen. And so I'm just trying to. Okay, I'll share one example with you, wherein so I think Varun has asked this question. So Varun, so the one of the advisory that we had, I mean the query that had come to us. So there was this Indian entity and the foreign parent company. Now foreign parent company, they made an arrangement. They made an arrangement that whatever. So the Indian company used to invoice to the foreign company. Indian company used to invoice to the foreign company. Now the foreign company made an arrangement amongst the group, in their group, that the money which was due to the Indian company will be deposited in another subsidiary outside India, and it will be remitted to Indian company on a need basis. Now, although it was remitted back within 6 months, it was remitted in the 6 months. Now, if you see the export provisions, if you see the export rules, it says that you have to realize the export proceedings within 6 months. Now, Varun, if you see this company was able to get the money in 6 months. So it was complying with the rules with regard to the export. However, if you see Section 8 of the Act, what does it say? That you have to realize the proceeds, export proceeds, as soon as it becomes realizable. So any transaction which delays the realizability of the amount cannot be undertaken. It is not allowed to be undertaken. So any of these transactions, any of these agreements which were delaying the receipt of foreign exchange proceedings in India, that were not allowed. So if you see here that although the regulation, the rules and the master directions were met with, however, one really have to understand the whole of the act in some cases so that we can provide the opinion in the correct opinion. But if you see, if there is if you see more other things, then there may be a situation wherein you are able to get the clear answer from the master directions as well. For example, let us talk about the ODI regulation. Now, ODI regulation, it says that you can invest 400% of your net worth. Now, if and net worth also, it is a clear way that how you can club in the network of a subsidiary and a holding company only if it is 51% or more. Now, that is very clear in the master direction. So if something like that comes, it is easy to refer master direction and give the answer. So it depends on the query actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. The second query comes from Kavita ma'am, and she was willing to ask you that she has some transaction.
Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. Hello, am I audible? Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there was another query that was from Kavita ma'am, and she was willing to ask you that she has written to RBI regarding some transaction, and there is no response from RBI since past 4 months. So she was willing to ask you that is there any particular, say, email or some contact wherein she can say connect and get the acknowledgement, final acknowledgement letter?
So it will depend. It will be best that you can connect with the AD bank through which you are dealing in. If there is a UIN number that you have received for FCGPR, in that case, I think you can contact with the regional at the RBI level. Otherwise, so that's how it can be done.
Fine. There is another query from Sanket Gunjikar. He has asked that machinery bought from outside India party with deferred payment of 36 months with interest element, whether this is a capital account transaction and is it allowed?
Yeah, okay, Sanket
Gunjikar,
machinery bought, yeah, I'll take that. Machinery bought from outside India party, whether with deferred payment of 36 months with interest element, whether this is a capital or is it allowed? Now the machinery is there is an import of machinery with the deferred payment of 36 months. Now it's an import. Import payment cannot be deferred as more than the time that is being given. So you cannot defer their machinery for 36 months. And now there is also a interest element in the import. So that is beyond the general trade practice. It will need the approval from RBI.
fine. Ma'am, there is another query from Kavita ji. She is willing to ask that if a person has a savings account and if he is later on, say, moved out of India, he's an NRI, so whether that account needs to be converted to, say, a NRI or NRE account, something like that?
Yeah. So if there is a change from the residential status from resident to NRI, from resident to non-resident, so all the account that the person is having in India will by default change into NRO account. They will become the NRO account. And there are, in fact, I was seeing any question which was talking about DMAT or something. So one has to intimate to the AD bank. One has to intimate to the bankers that there is a change in the residential status.
Fine. Ma'am, there was a query from Praveen Dhiranji that there are various accounts and what kind of transactions are allowed. I think you have covered most of it. Rather, in your session, it was not possible, I guess, to cover those transactions part, but you just covered the basics part.
Yeah, I can tell you. What Praveen, I can see it, he's asking, please throw light on various type of account, permissible transaction from such account. I can tell you, Praveen, that, this is, although there are permissible debit and credit that are specifically mentioned under the relevant schedule, like Schedule 2 talks about NRE account, Schedule of the deposit regulation. Now, Schedule 4 talks about the NRO. However, what we have been seeing that sometimes there is an ambiguity with regard to what can be credited in the NRE account and what can be credited in the NRO account because of the nature of these two accounts. You see, NRE account is something which is freely repatriable and which is something on which interest is exempted from tax. Now, if you tell me, in fact, we had faced this case, any remittance from NRO account to NRE account, any remittance from NRO account to NRE account, whether it should be permissible. Now, because NRO to NRE, once it lands into NRE account, it will be, interest will be exempt on that amount. So those type of transactions, one has to look into that whether logically it is making sense. So one is definitely, one has to look into the specified debit and credit that are mentioned in the schedules. Apart from that, one also has to look into that whether it is making sense logically, and whether it is substance, that any transfer from NRO account in which the interest is taxable and to NRE account in which the interest is not taxable. Now, can it be allowed? So those type of questions that one need to ask, because sometimes, yes, I agree that there is no clear yes or no in this.
Right. Understood, man. It was very lucid session. It was amazing to hear from you, and the way you explained it, it was really nice and easygoing. I think the queries could come along and we can have the queries till, say, another 15-20 minutes, but we have some paucity of time. And as committed, we have already, say, skipped the timelines, which was 6 to 7:30. So we are already now near to 8. So better we'll have another session later on with more detailed concepts on other areas of FEMA, and even the taxation part, if you can just cover that. But as of now, we wish to say stop here. And for formal vote of thanks, I'll definitely request now CA Pawan Jaju, the Vikasa chairman, as well as the vice chairman of the Amaravati branch. He will come forward and do the honors. I'll request Pawanji to please come forward and do the honors. Pawan bhai, you are there?
Yes, sir. Yes, I am here, sir. I see a Pawan Jaju, Vice Chairman, Amaravati branch. Consider it's my privilege to propose vote of thanks in this international taxation series. First and foremost of all, I thank today's speaker, CA Shubha Bhushan ma'am, for excellent deliberation on FEMA. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your excellent and lucid deliberation. FEMA, which looks tough, but is actually tough, but is looking really simple after this session, which we think is now a doable job for all of us as a practice, being in the Amaravati more interior to Nagpur. We are also now look for a FEMA work and practice. Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening on this excellent subject in such a lucid language. Thereafter, I thank Nagpur branch for arranging such a superb session and allowing us Amravati as a co-host with Chandrapur and Varda CP chapter. Thank you. Thanks for your cooperation. We thank Nagpur Vikasa, Amravati Vikasa for wholehearted support. We thank C. Anjum sir for introducing today's speaker, ma'am. At last, our entire audience, thanks for your patience listening. Thank you, one and all present over here. Thank you. With this, we conclude the session.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
It was really a nice session, ma'am. I am not in FEMA, but after hearing this session, I am also planning for FEMA. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad.
Yes, sir. Praveen sir, thank you very much. Anjum sir, Jiten sir, and entire audience, thank you for your valuable presence. Jiten bhai, we can conclude the meeting.